Did you know that you can train your brain to create high frequency behaviors? It actually all comes down to dopamine. In this video, I'm going to show you how to strategically use dopamine to install what I call divine discipline in your life. Let's get started. These days, dopamine has a pretty bad rap. When people think about dopamine, they think about things like hits from social media, the latest Netflix binge, eating junk food, and even more destructive behaviors like drug and alcohol addiction and gambling addiction. Now, chasing these types of dopamine hits is bad any way you slice it. However, what many people don't realize is that there's both good dopamine and bad dopamine. For example, when you accomplish a task or step outside your comfort zone, you're actually releasing good dopamine, and that's awesome. Think of it this way. At the beginning of every day, you have a certain amount of dopamine in your system at your disposal. Let's say for the purpose of this discussion that you start the day with 100 units of dopamine. And it's up to you to decide what you're going to do with those 100 units. It's like a daily energy budget. And we must budget our dopamine just like a CFO of a billion-dollar corporation would if we want to get maximum results. So things like eating junk food, gossiping, and engaging in distractions will burn through our dopamine reserves very quickly. The thing is, when your dopamine reserves are low, you need more and bigger and oftentimes more destructive things to get the same fix, right? So if this sounds a lot like what a drug addict go through, that's because it is. On the other hand, if you use dopamine intentionally to install the right behaviors and routines, those routines compound to create incredible results in your life. I'm sure you've heard about the power of compound interest, which Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world. The bottom line here is that you can spend your dopamine like a drug addict, or you can invest it in the way a multi-millionaire does. So what is the key to strategically using dopamine to develop divine discipline? The answer is to celebrate our successes, both big and especially small, throughout the day. I learned this from the world's #1 expert on behavioral design and habit installation, a guy by the name of BJ Fogg. His Tiny Habits framework has been a complete game changer for myself and by now millions of other people. As BJ explains, when you celebrate effectively, you tap into the reward circuitry of your brain. And when you do this, you encourage the brain to recognize and encode those behaviors you've just performed. So when you do a behavior and immediately celebrate that behavior, you get that dopamine hit. And then your brain says, this is awesome. Let's do more of this. This is how you can literally hack your brain to crave divine discipline. So you're probably familiar with the ideas of Pavlov's dogs and the idea of positive reinforcement. For decades, people have been using positive reinforcement, not just to train animals, but to also parent better and lead our teams better. So this idea works so well when used on animals and other people. Doesn't it make sense for us to use it on ourselves? Of course, the answer is yes. So to celebrate effectively, all you need to do is do a celebratory action right after you do the behavior you want to install. My personal favorite way to celebrate is to say the word yes, like this as I pump my fist. Yes! I remember a couple of years ago, I reinstalled the habit of taking vitamins every morning. And this is something that I just wasn't doing for a while. So when I would take my vitamins, and every time I swallowed my vitamins, I would say yes. And to believe it or not, I still do this every single day. And it's been over 2 years ago since I've done that. I probably don't need to be doing this at this point because the habit is pretty automatic. But on the other hand, why wouldn't I do it? Because I'm doing something that makes me feel good. And when I do like bigger things, like if I want to celebrate like something bigger, like completing a tough workout or doing a tough call, I will celebrate bigger. I might do something like, yes, if that makes sense. Sometimes I'll just say, awesome, or I'm awesome. Oftentimes I'll actually do the theme of Superman to myself, the classic Superman theme, which is dun 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 dun. So that's one of the things that really helps me stay on track. So what you want to do is, those are some of my examples on how I celebrate, but you want to come up with your own ways that resonate with you on how you celebrate. And then we can use that to strategically install any behavior we want. So let's talk about that now. Celebration is actually the last step in designing any behavior you want. BJ Fogg teaches installing any habit you want as an ABC process. The A stands for anchor, B stands for behavior, and C stands for celebration. The anchor is critical. You want to anchor the behavior into something that's already happening to you in your day. So to get a little more technical here, when I wanted to install my vitamin habit a couple years ago, the thing that I always did every morning after I woke up was I would get the food ready for my dogs. So my anchor was that after I put my dog's food bowls down, then I would take my vitamins. And then I would follow that by a celebration, which again was that yes action that I showed you about a minute ago. So you can use this exact behavior, this exact formula to install any behavior you want, including installing an exercise routine, eating better, sleeping better, installing a meditation practice, being more present with your family, or anything else. The key is to start small. That's why the book is called Tiny Habits. And the example that BJ often uses is that when he wanted to install a new exercise habit, he started that by doing 2 push-ups every time after he used the bathroom. So his recipe was, after I pee, then I will do 2 push-ups, followed by the celebration. Eventually, he was doing a lot more than those 2 push-ups, but he started out with just the 2. The key is to start small. This is a total game changer, and you can use this to install any habit you want scientifically. And of course, we know that our life is informed by our actions, so we can actually use this literally to just hack our brain into essentially being a superhuman. We can use it to be much more productive, much more present, in the best shape of our lives, the best parent ever, the best friend ever. And just doing this is going to put you ahead of really 99% of the population. But in my estimation, this just scratches the surface of what we're capable of doing. So the thing that's really incredible is that we can use the process I just described to actually consistently and repeatedly connect with higher forces on a regular basis. When we do this, we unlock yet another level of abundance, energy, and power. We do this with what I call the abundance algorithms. The abundance algorithms are basically using the same process I just described to stay in a high frequency all day, every day. These are essentially frequency cheat codes. They're mini spiritual hacks that can instantly align you with your higher self amidst the stress, distraction, and chaos that happens in our everyday life. They really raise our energy and raise your field. So here's how they work. Pick something that's happening to you throughout the day and use those things as anchors to remind you to stay in that abundant state. You can use these anchors as clues to do things that raise your vibration and get you in that higher frequency state. So some of the things that you might want to consider doing are using them as cues to do things like mantras, affirmations, and things like that. So here are a few of my personal favorite abundance algorithms to give you an idea how this works. So one of them is after I turn on the water to wash my hands after using the restroom, I'll think of 3 things I'm grateful for. Another thing is after I notice that I'm waiting for an elevator or a light to turn green, I'll say to myself, every day in every way, I'm becoming more and more financially prosperous. Or another affirmation that I might be focusing on. Oftentimes after I put the last dish in the dishwasher, I'll say to myself, it's easy for me to receive. And of course, you want to be sure to celebrate after you do these behaviors so you can get that extra dose of awesome. So you're really getting kind of 2 layers because you're getting the vibrational upgrade and you're getting the celebration. And so what we're doing is basically we're finding ways throughout the day to stay in that abundant, high vibe state. When you use these abundance algorithms, in addition to the other practices that you can use to raise your vibration, like exercising, meditating, doing quality work, and connecting with loved ones, it's a complete game changer. This is true divine discipline in action. These aren't just habits, they're rewiring your subconscious to live in abundance, clarity, and joy. And every time you repeat your mantra or micro ritual, you're actually literally installing a new energetic blueprint. They keep you in an abundant, high frequency state pretty much all day, every day, which by law is going to translate into lots of abundance for you in the 3-dimensional world. So divine discipline isn't really just about pushing harder. It's about making high frequency behavior automatic. You don't need more willpower. You just need better rituals. And when you design your day with divine discipline, abundance becomes inevitable. You do that by combining strategic dopamine that we talked about with behavior design and the abundance algorithms that we described in this video. And with these tools at your side, you become the kind of person who naturally attracts abundance. And you can easily start doing this today. In my next video, I'm going to show you another powerful technique to really upgrade your magnetic field. So stay tuned, and in the meantime, please like and subscribe to this video if it resonated. This is Reich, keeping awesome.